The Tennessee Titans do need a quarterback, but they're more likely to trade out of the number one overall pick. Live from the Combine on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to today's edition of Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of NFL action. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, the madman, here with my co-host, Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, I am live from the NFL Combine, and we got a lot to discuss. Travis Kelce looking like he's coming back to Kansas City, but doesn't matter. Jonathan Allen asked for a trade out of Washington, and the Tennessee Titans look like they want to trade out of the number one overall pick. Before we get into all of it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Luke, I've been at the Combine all day today, getting quotes, talking to folks. Heard from Tennessee Titans general manager Mike Borgonzi that, obviously they could still take one of these players, but sounds like they're pretty interested in trading down.
I respect it a lot. The most important thing he's going to do is pick his quarterback. You don't need to do it just because you have the number. Like you don't have to be the first quarterback. You don't take the first quarterback you can take. Take the right quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And obviously, I'm boots on the ground with the Titans every day, so I have my thoughts, and it's not far away from what you're saying right now. But what I do want to go over is the quote from Titans' new general manager, Mike Borgonzi. And Borgonzi came from the Kansas City Chiefs organization this offseason. He said, quote, "Anytime you have the number one pick, it's always going to be a topic of conversation to trade. We've had some phone calls, and I'll keep those phone calls close to the vest. But yeah, we've had some phone calls." Look, I think the reality is when you need a quarterback, and there are quarterbacks at the top of the draft, the instant thing that people say is, well, they'd be dumb to pass on a quarterback. But I think the conversation around the Titans is that roster is pretty far away from being able to support a quarterback. And someone who's watched the Titans for a long time, you've seen Vince Young and Jake Locker and Marcus Mariota all be high picks in the draft and still fail because the infrastructure around them wasn't necessarily ready to support them. So I think if you're the Tennessee Titans and if you have organizational patience, like that the general manager or that the president of football operations and that the controlling owner, Amy Adams Strunk, is going to give you patience, then I agree with you. There's no need to rush the quarterback. And with all of the needs that the Tennessee Titans have on the roster, all at premium positions too, wide receiver, edge, offensive tackle, like it only makes sense for the Titans to leverage this moment to trade down, collect as many picks as they can possibly get. The Titans don't have a third round pick this year. They have 35-1 and no other picks in the top 100. That is not a great place to be for a rebuilding team. So this number one pick is the best asset that you possibly have that you could parlay into more picks to help fix your broken roster.
I think one of the draft fallacies that we see media fall into a lot is this kind of like baseline assumption that if you have the number one overall pick, that is the best chance you're ever going to get a quarterback.
Right.
And we have too many counterexamples in the NFL of teams that found their quarterback without the number one overall pick. And in fact, those number one overall pick quarterbacks, I think they like represent a bigger slice of the pie chart of like who the starters are. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't know. Patrick Mahomes wasn't, Jalen Hurts wasn't, Jared Goff was, but not by the team that got him, that has him now, that has had the success with him that the Lions have had. Jaden Daniels was number two, go through the entire playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't need to force it. If there is a Trevor Lawrence coming out, an Andrew Luck, a Matthew Stafford, okay, that becomes a different conversation, right?
Right.
But that ain't this class. That is not Cam Ward. That is not Shedeur Sanders. Whatever you think of them, they're not slam dunk home runs. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And who's coming out next year? What if you waited for like Arch Manning if you wanted him? Like, what if you waited for somebody? And every NFL front office, including the Titans, is going to have their ideas of who's coming out next year and how much do we like those guys. And they're going to like compare this to them. So yeah, then maximize your value. And whether that means trading down like the Bears did, trying to get a bunch of picks, or take Travis Hunter and run to the bank, or Abdul Carter and run to the bank, whatever you think the most valuable thing is, that can become the discussion very freely. But you do not need to have the number 1 overall pick. So I know you talk to Titans fans all the time. I want to talk to Titans fans real quick. Titans fans, don't be scared. Okay, don't be scared of trading out of the number 1 overall pick and then needing a quarterback and, oh no, we only pick 7th. You'll be fine. It's fine. You will absolutely be able to do what you have to do from there. If that means you have to trade up a little bit, maybe it becomes a little more expensive, but you can make it work. And what you get in return for trading down here probably is going to be worth it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on your point of not needing the number 1 overall pick to get a quarterback, like you said, look at the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL that we all generally accept as the top 4. Patrick Mahomes, not number 1. Lamar Jackson barely made it into the first round, last pick of the first round. Joe Burrow, yes, number 1 overall quarterback. Josh Allen was QB3 in his draft, and the Bills traded up to go get him. So the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL.
And the Chiefs traded up to get Mahomes.
Exactly. Only one of them. And with that in mind, who is running the show for the Tennessee Titans? It's number 1, the new general manager, Mike Borgonzi, who came from Kansas City, and president of football operations, Chad Brinker, who came from Green Bay. So you have 2 teams who have done it in a way where they didn't need the number 1 pick. And a lot of Titans fans are saying, oh, you trade down, you get extra draft capital. You're just going to have to use that to go back up in a trade next year if you want to get your quarterback or whatever.
I do think it'll be profitable. Yeah, I do think you still come out ahead in that. After you trade down, then back up, I still think you have stuff left over, depending on how 2025 goes for the Titans, right? It's different if the Titans have some crazy season because they, bring in Aaron Rodgers and he has a renaissance season and you make the playoffs and you're picking 25th. Maybe that's different, but obviously, for other reasons, you probably take that. I'm going to guess most Titans fans would enjoy watching a playoff season in 2025 come out of nowhere.
I agree. And one thing I will say is a lot of Tennessee Titans fans, and obviously I have plenty of those conversations, are saying, well, you don't know that the quarterback classes are going to be better in the next few years. There's no way to know. And what I would say to that is, well, if a year ago today, Luke, I would have told you Cam Ward is the certified number 1 pick in the draft next year, you would have said I'm insane. If I would have told you that Joe Burrow is the number 1 pick in the draft, no doubt about it, will be considered one of the best prospects that have come out in the draft in the last 15 years. If I would have told you that a year before Joe Burrow got drafted, you would have told me he's a day 3 pick. Not you personally, Luke, but the proverbial you.
Well, that was the deal. Yeah, things change a lot from a player's one year to another, which is why personally, when I scout somebody in the draft, I never watch last year. I only watch his final year, unless there's like a specific reason, like with Will Levis, because his last year was kind of weird, and you maybe want to look at So like. Unless there's a specific reason to, like he was super hurt or something like that, guys change so much. I remember even like Caleb Williams, his second to last year at USC. I was watching that because he was throwing to Jordan Addison, and the Vikings had just drafted him, and I was doing content on that, and I was like, this quarterback is inaccurate and bad, and the difference between him and senior year, I still wasn't huge on him, but I was like the difference was night and day. If I had actually taken that 2022 evaluation to the bank and just like sat on that, I would have called him a 4th round pick. I would have been like saying insane stuff. So guys change a lot. Yeah, that's absolutely a thing, but you still want to have a sense for the lay of the land.
And not only do guys change a lot, but in college, I mean, anyone listening to this, think about how much you grew and changed as a person.
Oh, for
from
sure.
The first year in college to your last year in college. Like that's what I always say is
I went through a reggae phase. Like it happens.
The reason that youth and age is such an important part in the draft evaluation is because psychologically speaking, as males, your ability to develop cognitively starts to lessen as you get past 25. So that's why all this stuff matters, and why saying, oh, next year or the year after the quarterback class won't be as good, it's a fruitful exercise because you simply cannot know. But with that being said, done talking about college guys in the draft. We got big news at the Combine. Jonathan Allen wants a trade from the Washington Commanders. Do want to thank you guys again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed for year-round free NFL content on all platforms. It's Locked On NFL, your team every day. But we did get big NFL news while at the Combine on Tuesday. And again, it is a trade request from Jonathan Allen. He has requested a trade from the Washington Commanders, where he spent his entire career. My guy, David Harrison, who's also here at the NFL Combine, broke down the big news.
The news is starting early for the Washington Commanders here in Indianapolis for the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. I'm David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Tuesday morning, getting ready to head out to the convention center to speak to General Manager Adam Peters. And the news breaks and has been confirmed since then by WUSA 9's Chick Hernandez that the Washington Commanders have given permission to defensive tackle Jonathan Allen and his representatives to seek a trade partner. So 2 years of trade speculation, really kind of stemming back from when John Allen himself voiced displeasure with being on the team and admitted to even considering what it might be like to be on a different team. That season went by. This last season went by. We heard John Allen's tone change a little bit. Even told me after the NFC Championship game loss that he wanted to be in Washington moving forward and that the team was aware of his feelings. Well, it appears that the team does not share those same feelings, and Jonathan Allen very likely to be traded this offseason, if not sooner, later as we get into this offseason process. So more on that, including trade destinations, potential compensation package, and what it means as a ripple effect for the Washington Commanders this offseason, all coming up on the Locked On Commanders podcast. So make sure you're subscribed, have those notifications turned on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, Luke, I talked to David at the Combine before the episode to maybe get a little bit more context. And Jonathan Allen has no more guaranteed money on his deal. He wants a little bit more long-term security, even if he's not going to get paid, top of the market like he was paid a couple of years ago when he got his first big contract. But really where I come down on this regardless is the Washington Commanders, in my opinion, are a team that needs to start adding more talent and subtracting Jonathan Allen financially, whatever the reason, roster construction, whatever reason that these two sides have not been able to find a middle ground. I just don't think it's what's best for the Commanders going forward. Again, with what they did last year, they need to add as much talent as they possibly can. So subtracting a Jonathan Allen from the equation on the defensive line, maybe they have another move that we'll talk about here in a second to follow it up and kind of cancel that out, or maybe even improve over Jonathan Allen. But to me, it is one of those things where both of these sides, I think it would be best for them to figure this out, because the Commanders are in a space right now where they need to go all in, and trading your stalwart on the defensive line. I know that he wants more money, but I just don't know if that's what's best for the team in 2025.
So my read on this is I think they're just moving on to Jerjon Newton. I think this says what they think about Jerjon Newton. They go, yeah, we don't need you. Yeah. We don't need you anymore. He's over 30. He's coming off injuries. No guaranteed money left. They would have to, do a deal like the one they just did with Deron Payne. Mm-hmm. And they go, well, or we could go with the guy on the rookie deal. And they're trying to, keep that there. I find that in these situations, when you have like a long-term veteran that's been the guy for a long time, and then the team is suddenly willing to part ways with him after a year, not where he declined, but where he just dealt with a couple of bumps and bruises, and then there's a young guy waiting in the wings, it tells me more about the young guy than the old guy. So I don't know. I mean, they've granted him permission to seek a trade. Usually that pretty much means that we're done talking and okay, go see what you can get from somebody else. And honestly, if I can homer this a little bit, if I can home cook a little bit, this is such a Kwesi move. This is such a Vikings move. Kwesi loves a guy over 30 with injuries, with, a weird contract situation,
right?
That you can possibly get, you can buy low. I mean, he's a Wall Street guy, stock trader, so he loves to try to buy low. And it's a position the Vikings need. So I could absolutely see Kwesi going after something like this. The problem is they don't really have the draft capital to play around with, but it might not net the Commanders as much draft capital as they hope. They're just trying to get rid of some cap. And ultimately, this is less about, I think, like managing resources and trying to, trade in Jonathan Allen for some resources that you can turn into more. No, I think it's about passing the torch to the young guy.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And one other thing that David mentioned when we were having these discussions is what trade compensation could look like. And you're 100% right. David was thinking a conditional day 3 pick at this point, and basically
just please take the money. Yeah, yes. That's the kind of draft. And like that's the kind of thing, like that's the best you can do with your day 3 picks, in my opinion. You can either get a special teamer or you can get a starter that's expensive. The right to a starter that's expensive is worth so much more to me. So I love it when teams do this. I think the Ravens have built Ozzie Newsome built a Hall of Fame career as a GM doing that. Like, I think it is absolutely a thing that teams should do. And it sucks for the Commanders because it's the cat's out of the bag. They know they're trying to get rid of the money and they don't really have any leverage to ask for more.
Yep, exactly that. And that's going to lower the draft capital. And really at this point, it's just about, getting anything that you can get back. And David even mentioned that if they can't find a trade partner, it probably will end in a release, which, knowing that around the NFL, that's going to drive the value down as well. And another layer of this that makes it make sense ultimately is this is an excellent draft class on the interior defensive line. It is excellent. Yeah. So you have a Deron
really
Payne
easy to replace your depth. If you're going to promote a depth guy, and you need to replace him, absolutely, that 5th round pick you're getting back for Jonathan Allen, put it right back into the D-line, and you've got a unit you feel good about, so long as you feel good about Jerjon Newton, which I think the Commanders do. People are talking about him as a top 10 pick before injury stuff got in the way. So.
And I'd be curious to see how his foot is, having a fully healed offseason where I think the impact on rookies in their first year where they don't get to practice football during the offseason.
Crazy.
They're doing the drills. They are practicing the drills at the combine and for their pro day to help them make the most money. They're not having football practice and practicing football like they're
learning how to get out of sprinters blocks. Yep.
Exactly. It's totally different training. It's really more track training than it is football training. So with Jerjon Newton going through that last all season and then having the foot issue last all season, having a full all season now, not being a rookie, feeling comfortable, being fully integrated, and then getting a promotion, you know what I mean? That's gotta move you forward. And then you add that to, like I said, a very good interior defensive line class. I mean, the Titans took Devondre Sweat, pick number 38 last year, and Jeffrey Simmons on a $100 million contract. And I still want the Titans to go get an interior defensive lineman because the class.
That's so real of you. That's so real.
Dude, build the trenches, I'm serious about it.
Absolutely. 100%. Yes.
Look at what the Eagles just did. They had a rotation of 7 to 8 guys who could consistently come in and do a job. That's what you need if you don't have elite quarterback play. Personally, Luke, for me, my roster philosophy is you either have a great quarterback or you just have both of these things. You have a great quarterback, and then you need someone who's going to get that quarterback on the ground. Like that is what it comes down to. Keeping your quarterback off the ground, getting that quarterback on the ground. That is the game of football right there. And more defensive line help. Now, what I mentioned earlier, if the Washington Commanders send out Jonathan Allen for a day 3 pick, promote Johnny Newton, all of that, I still think they're in a position to acquire top talent. I think the Commanders need to go trade for Myles Garrett. I think that makes so much sense. I think it's a perfect fit, and it's a premium position where the Commanders' pass rush needs to improve to go to that next level, and to have a Myles Garrett on that side of the ball to pair with your interior defensive line that we just talked about. That's like a slam dunk fit for me. And you look at a guy like Adam Peters, who is the general manager for the Commanders. He was with San Francisco. They have made a ton of trades for high-level veterans, whether it be Trent Williams or Christian McCaffrey or what have you. Like, it's a guy who's done these kind of deals, and they're in a perfect position with a QB on a rookie contract to go make a splash veteran move for Myles Garrett.
I love it. Oh my God. I mean, I personally love it because there's 3 teams in the NFC North that could be in on Myles Garrett, and I'm scared of that. So I would love it if he stayed out of the division, but you're right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And especially if you've got a young guy on the interior, put him next to Deron Payne and Myles Garrett, and he's going to be eating one-on-ones all day long. He's going to be at best the guy that they are third most worried about, and that will afford you lots of opportunities to get your sea legs under you as a young guy in the NFL.
Myles Garrett, more maybe than any other defensive player in the NFL, can raise the level of people around him because of the attention that he requires.
Yeah, for sure.
I believe that Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the NFL. So with that in mind, I mean, obviously that'll elevate your team. But moving right along, speaking of elevating their team, Travis Kelce did it for a long time. But can he do it anymore, and will he play? We got a little bit of information on that at the Combine on Tuesday as well. All right, Luke. So Kansas City Chiefs general manager Brett Veach spoke at the Combine on Tuesday, and he said that after a recent conversation with Travis Kelce, it's his expectation that Travis Kelce will return in 2025. I guess, what's your reaction to that news? Is it what you expected? Are you surprised that he decided to do that?
Tight ends tend to do this. Like, they tend to play, well after they have sort of aged out of the peak physical, athleticism that they kind of made their name on. I think about Jason Witten and Zach Ertz and these guys that sort of have this like twilight chapter to their career.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me a lot that Kelce's going to do that, because the thing about tight ends is they kind of do age gracefully. He's not going to, be the downfield type threat that he was when you were talking about him in 2018. Right. But the thing about tight ends is if you can block reasonably, which an old guy can, and if you can just run a precise route, then you're going to be okay. And you don't need to still be able to run a 4.5 40 to do those things. So tight end to me has always been a position that relative to other positions, you really can play cold. Or you can play old. Like, you can make it work for years. So I don't know if Kelce's going to like truly retire for a while. However, the Chiefs have to be Xavier Worthy's team from here on out, or whoever else they acquire in the offseason.
And that's the number one thing. I'm with you. I think that Kelce can continue playing, but the way that we view Travis Kelce and the way that the Chiefs build their roster with their understanding of Travis Kelce, I think that's important. Actually, that's something our guys over at Locked On Chiefs talked about, because there was a recent top 100 NFL players list, and Travis Kelce wasn't on it.
The glaring omission.
I think
the glaring omission is one Travis Kelce. So it's. Yeah. Do you think that he should be considered top 100 after the season that he just put up?
It's tough. I don't know that I would say he's top 100. I think he played well, but there are some really good tight ends out there right now in the league, and he didn't have a great season. So does it shock me he didn't make the top 100? No. I'm surprised that I will say this. I'm probably more surprised that Tooney is the lowest Chief at 46 than I am that Travis Kelce didn't make the list at all.
So it sounds like our guys at Locked On Chiefs kind of understand that Kelce isn't the player that he once was. And with that understanding, I know you said that it's Xavier Worthy's team, and I agree that he has to be a dynamic playmaker, but I think the Chiefs can't just add standard pieces now and be like, oh, we're the Chiefs, we got to the Super Bowl. Like, they need to be more aggressive and not just kind of rest on their laurels. And, I think of a move where they traded away Tyreek Hill. Well, they could get away with that, but I think they might need to do the opposite of that. I think the Chiefs might need to be players in a big-time trade to get a veteran in there. I think that Mahomes took them as far as he could. That defense had good moments as well, but they're so poor on the offensive line. I think about a player like Laramie Tunsil in Houston. Now, would Houston trade Laramie Tunsil? I don't know. But their offensive line was bad last year. Tunsil did not play great. And if the Chiefs could get him to add to their left tackle spot, I know that they drafted Kingsley Suamaitai a couple of years ago. That hasn't really panned out. I'm sorry if you're in year 2 or year 1 and you couldn't get on the field last year with all the issues they had consistently. Like, to me, that's not a great sign. You don't want to give up on a guy young. And Suamaitai was a guy who needed some development anyway. That was understood when he was drafted. But I think Kansas City does need to make one big move if they want to kind of keep this thing rolling. And if they don't, and they just try to draft and develop and stay low key and everything like that, I don't think that they're going to be able to get back to where they were last year, even in a loss. I think it might be more of a reset year for them if they don't stay aggressive.
Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes' contract has a big old roster bonus on it that's set to hit this year. That to me looks really strongly intended to be restructured, and that will save them $38 million cap. So the Chiefs have more cap than it looks like on the websites right now. I think that seems very much the intention is to restructure that, and I think that they absolutely can afford to go out and just T. Higgins this, just go get the guy.
Right.
And pair him with and then suddenly you've got your 2 and you're good to go. I'm not sure if they are when you have Mahomes. I don't think you need to be the team that has the one insane superstar that the whole thing runs through like it was Tyreek Hill. They don't need to Justin Jefferson this or have a Jamar Chase. But you add a T. Higgins, who is, could be a wide receiver one in his own right. Pair him with Xavier Worthy, whoever you want to call one there, you call one there, and let that sort itself out as target shares like manifest over the season. And I think you're good, but I do think that it's like I don't want him to. I don't think if you're the Chiefs, you want to spend another first round pick doing this. I think you want to get go spend some money, get a veteran, and then use your draft capital to try to build out your offensive line in a more sustainable way, so that you're not just going out and like paying a bunch of guys and not you're not able to have the depth.
Yeah, like Wanya Morris, situations, and DJ Humphreys, and guys like that. Yeah,
like Orlando Browning. This like that they've done some stuff over the last few years on the front to kind of try to like. They've just permanently been band-aiding with like older players. Then every once in a while they'll hit a Joe Thuney where they can get 4 years get him on a 4-year deal and like do the thing and spend some money. But the way to build trenches, you want to look at the Eagles. The way to build trenches is through the draft. Look at the Lions drafted most of those guys, I thought too, or at least on the defense. But if you want a sustainable trenches, do that through the draft, but it will take those guys time. So you still need Band-Aids in the meantime. Yes. And then you need those guys to take over year 2, year 3. That's what your draft is for. And you want to get some skill players up front. I think defensively, the Chiefs are in a good enough spot where they can spend a lot of resources on offense and really try to maximize this thing.
Yeah. And with right guard Trey Smith set to hit free agency, reports right now are that he's not going to get the tag. So they have a lot of holes to fill. They have a lot of questions and a lot to do if they're going to get back to the Super Bowl and ultimately get back to winning, which, quite frankly, all the rest of us, not that much in a hurry to get Kansas City back to the podium. So, sure, take your time, Kansas City. Don't be aggressive. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, I'm live here from the Combine. Settings, the sound, it may be a little bit different, but we're doing it live, baby. We're doing it live. But with that being said, that is going to do it for us today here on the Locked On NFL podcast. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, with the brain, Luke Braun. And as I tell you every episode, stay safe out there.